Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Autist Circle, episode 26 of season 2. Jean-Honoré Fragonard. I am your host,
Yeah.
Bleach Demon, and joined by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Fat Dave, also known as Total Blackout Painting. Let's get
Oh,
stuck in.
yeah. This episode is gonna be rife with bad French pronunciation. But yeah, so we're talking about Jean-Honoré Fragonard, and he is a Rococo painter from the mid 18th century. That his work pre-exists the French Revolution and really kind of gives a good clue into some things that led into the French Revolution. So the first thing I have, jump over to the right scene here so I don't forget it this time. So first thing I'm going to go through some. We're going to talk a little bit about Rococo before we jump into the timeline. So just some notes on that. This is a Rococo style building here with lots of ornamentation, lots of the gilded works, columns, stuff like that. Very, and like gilded leaves and stuff. So it looks very kind of naturey almost, with swoops and
Mhm.
curves and stuff like that. But I'll read my blurb here. So, Rococo occurred in the late Baroque and is a style of art and architecture which is marked by highly decorative and often ostentatious ornamentalism. It features scrolling curves, gilding, white and pastel colors, and sculpted molding, and it commonly features frescoes and other art to create the art create the illusion of motion and drama. So originally known as Raquel, um, which is reflected on this uh, picture here. So it was a French style of design of furniture and interiors first, and first came to rise under Louis the 14th. Um, and it was a reaction to
Ah, the
the
Sun King.
yes, it was a reaction to the style of or Louis the 15th. So it came in under Louis the 15th, and it was a reaction to the uh, French classicism, which was popular under Louis the 14th, um, and which was considered heavy and overly formal. And Rocaille, like Rococo, featured abundance of curves, counter curves, undulations, and other elements prevalent in nature. The first the period first began in the early 18th century and is considered to have ended in the early 19th century after the rise of neoclassicism and romanticism. And it was most prominent in France, although it did spread through other places in Europe, like northern Italy, Austria, and Central Europe.
Hmm.
So now we'll jump over to the timeline here. So we can see Rococo starts when Louis the 15th or the 14th dies. And we can see that Fragonard's life expands beyond Rococo into classicism, and the French Revolution starts before or starts after the end of Rococo because there was a lead up to it. It died out slowly. So on the timeline, Jean-Honoré Fragonard is one of the last great masters of the Rococo period. He really represents Rococo at full maturity, and his works represent a more intimate pleasure than public grandeur. He represents Rococo again at its full maturity, private pleasure instead of public grandeur, frivolity and flirtation over moral weight. His works are described as delicate hedonism, and they encapsulate their aristocratic leisure, erotic suggestion, and intimate fantasy in a complete package. He exists at the cusp of a historical shift. The French Revolution happened during his life, and many of his works happened before the revolution during the height of aristocratic power. He is the painter of the late Rococo at its most seductive, technically brilliant, and historically fragile. an artist who perfected the visual language of aristocratic pleasure just before that world began to disappear. That was a mouthful. So now we'll jump over to the biography here. So Jean-Honoré Fragonard was born on April 5th in 1732, the only child of François and Francois. I don't know how the female pronunciation of that is.
François.
Francoise, there you go.
François
and Francoise. In Grasse in France. His father was a glove maker and merchant, which was kind of a luxury trade at the time, although it was still a trade. So he was not aristocratic. He did have a connection to aristocratic circles. Oh, hey, Violence, how you doing? His family moved to Paris in 1738. Oh, Violence is going to go crazy on this one. She's going to have to listen to our terrible my terrible French pronunciations. So his family moved to Paris in 1738, and his talents for art were recognized at an early age. His early education was not in art, but at a notary's office. In 1747, at the age of 15, he was sent to train in law at a notary office in Paris to give him a stable profession. But it soon became apparent that he was more suited to art than clerical work. It's claimed he wished to do nothing else but draw, and his parents allowed him to pursue artistic training. So his first artistic instruction came from Jean-Simeon Chardin, who's this gentleman here. This is a self-portrait he did in pastel, which I think is phenomenal, but it looks incredibly French. Chardin was best known for his still life paintings, but Fragonard's apprenticeship only lasted about 6 months before moving into the orbit of François Boucher, who was a well-known Rococo painter at the time. And Fragonard absorbed the Rococo style of Boucher, and Boucher is noted as the first person to recognize Fragonard's talent, but he sent him to Chardin for a foundation before taking him under his wing to teach him the Rococo style. So this is a painting by François Boucher, Virgin and Child with the young Saint John and John the Baptist and angels from 1765. Very early, very emblematic of Rococo style. Chardin and Boucher they had very contrasting styles. Chardin was recognized for quiet observation and restraint. His works were careful studies of life, domestic and grounded, and material convincing. This is one of his paintings, which is Sealing a Letter, which, as you can see, it's a picture of a guy, heating up a stamp on a candle so that he can stamp a letter. His works were closer to the Baroque.
It also has a little bit more of a throwback to some of the previous artists, with the dark background and the figures being illuminated rather than some of the other Rococo works.
Yeah. The work is definitely more late Baroque than Rococo. Well, Chardin was not a Rococo artist. He was more of a Baroque, a legacy. He fell more under the legacy of the Baroque. Like I said, because he has realism and including the elements that we're familiar with, the dark shading and the colors. His training under Chardin was meant to give him discipline and attention to structure and handling and the basics of the craft of art. Chardin was not the most dominant influence on his visual style, but gave him a firm foundation to build an art career on. So Boucher, on the other hand, was one of the defining artists of the French Rococo period. This is the Toilet of Venus from 1751, which is an incredibly Rococo style piece. The light pastel colors and the scroll work on all the stuff and the sweeping, um, just the softness of the cloth and the softness of the figures too. That's a really big thing. The softness of the
Hmm.
figures and the faces. Like I don't know if French people actually look like this in the 1700s, but a lot of the paintings and the people do. So his work figure featured the signature ornamentalism and soft pastel of the period. Uh, Bouchard recognized Fragonard's talent and eventually took him under his wing to teach him the Rococo style. And Fragonard's later works definitely fall into Boucher's style, but they still maintain the discipline and stability instilled in him through his short apprenticeship with Jardin. Uh, the decorative and soft brushstrokes of Boucher combined with the technical control are what later made Fragonard the icon of a Rococo that we actually know today.
Hmm.
So, as a young adult, this is a self portrait he did of himself as a young adult. In 1752, when he was about 20, he won the Prix de Rome with Jeroboam offering sacrifice for the idol, which is one of the works that we'll be talking about later. The Prix de Rome was a scholarship that was initially established in 1663 under Louis XIV, and it allowed winners to stay in Rome for 3 to 5 years at the expense of the state. And this allowed him to work and develop his style without needing to depend on patrons. Although Fragonard
Hmm.
did not immediately depart for Rome after winning this scholarship. Um, he spent 3 years studying under Charles and André von Loo. Uh, and von Loo was definitely, his work was more Baroque than Rococo, likely due to him. He was from a dynasty of successful Dutch painters. So
Hmm.
his father and one of his brothers, and I think his grandfather, were also famous Baroque painters. So
Hmm.
in 1756, he travels to Italy as a pensioner of the crown and remain at the French Academy in Rome until 1761. And this is the French Academy of Rome um, where it was at. And this is actually Medici House. So
Hmm.
while in Rome, he was exposed to works of the Baroque masters, which helped him further develop his style beyond Parisian Rococo. He trained alongside Hubert Robert while in Rome, this gentleman here. And this is one of his works, which is a hermit praying in the ruins of a Roman temple from 1760. Um,
Hmm.
oh, yeah, this painting also from this one back here. This is from Van Loo. This is Perseus and Andromeda, painted in between 1735 and 1740. So more Baroque, but it does have more of a classical feel to it. And actually, you can definitely see tales of Renaissance work in this. Um, and this is where Fragonard really developed his interest in gardens and landscapes, which will come into play quite heavily in his later works. And it's noted that he had special interests in places like Villa d'Este, which is what I've got a picture here. And this is in Tivoli. And it has, terraces and gardens, sweeping terraces and gardens and fountains and everything. Just a really kind of idyllic place. And if you were an artist in the 1800s, I imagine this would be a really amazing place to just hang out and paint. Um,
Oh yeah. I'd go there now if I had the opportunity.
right? I know it's like it's so picturesque, right? It seems like the perfect encapsulation of what you would expect aristocratic Europe to feel like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and which of course is what it was. So after Italy, or during while he was in Italy, and this is a portrait of Louis Francois Perrault, and is actually known as the Inspiration. It's from 1769, and this is by Fragonard. Fragonard's Italian years exposed him to a broad array of Baroque, Renaissance, Mannerist, and other works. It broadened his artistic imagination. And while in Rome, he studied antiquity and copied many major works across Italy. He sharpened his views of landscapes, gardens, and theatrical outdoor space. And he came back to France with a much more richer and elegant style than he left. So when he returned to Paris in 1765, he still had academic ambition. And in 1765, he exhibited, this is Corsius sacrificing himself to save Calero, which is a mythological scene. This was displayed at the Salon, which won him provisional approval to the Académie Royale des Peintures et du Sculpture, which is the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. This is an image of that from Jean-Baptiste Martin. This is from between 1712 and 1717, and it's supposedly a picture from inside of the hall. So, however, though, he never completed the piece that would have given him full admission. He had only one provisional approval. He needed to complete a full large-scale historical piece to get full admission. And instead, he turned away from large-scale public works and began working for wealthy patrons who wanted more libertine and decorative subjects. And this is really when he started becoming the artist that we remember today. Rather than becoming a painter of official state grandeur, he became a painter of private privilege and aristocratic fantasy. And in 1770s, he was commissioned by Madame du Barry, this lady who was the last maîtresse en traité, who was the royal mistress of King Louis XV of France. And she would later go on to be executed by guillotine during the Revolution.
I mean, of course, everybody, there's anybody got executed during the Revolution.
Yeah, yeah, lots of people lost their heads. This was, he did a series of 4 works for her called The Progression of Love, which were large-scale paintings. They were painted between 1771 and 1773. And although she did not like the works, who knows why, presumably because she was a bitch and she lost her head anyways, so it doesn't matter. But they became a big part of his legacy, and we'll actually be talking about one of those later on as well. So later in life, in 1769, he married Anne-Marie Girard. She was a miniature painter, which is like, this is a cameo that she painted. She painted little tiny things, like little tiny portraits in jewelry, brooches and stuff like that. And that same year, he had a daughter named Rosalie, who became one of his favorite subjects. But she was a frail and weak child, and she ended up passing away at the age of 19 in 1778. So, but also during this time, he took his sister-in-law, Marguerite Girard, as an apprentice at 14 years old, pictured here. And she went on to be a very, very talented and celebrated painter on her own. And this is one of her works called Motherhood from the 1800s. In
That's a remarkable work.
I think it's fantastic. I really love I love the inclusion of the dogs. Lots of these works have dogs in them, which I think are it's really cool. Like I'm an animal lover. I love seeing dogs in paintings. I love seeing cats. And so anyhow, so in 1773 to 1774, he made a second trip to Italy with the collector Monsieur Monsieur Bergeret de Grandcourt, this guy here, who was the son of a noble um, from the court of Louis the 15th, but he was supposedly, his father was like appointed as a tax collector. But this guy didn't really do anything. He didn't have a lot of work to do. Um,
Mhm.
and so but he was wealthy, and so he became a really celebrated patron of the arts. A really he funded lots of art. He was not an artist himself, and in lieu of that, he paid a lot of artists and bought a lot of art. Had a lot of had a big collection.
Hmm.
And so after 1774, he returned to Paris. He continued to produce works for patrons, but his works then started taking on a much quieter personal tone. And then in 1789, which was when the French Revolution officially started kicking off, his world changed
Mhm.
dramatically. Many of his patrons and associates either fled Paris, were exiled, or were guillotined. And the cultural climate had changed pretty dramatically. In 1790, he returned to Grasse for a while, but he soon returned to Paris, where, with help from Jacques Louis David, who is the subject of our next episode, he secured an administrative role at the Musée Central des Arts, which would later become the Louvre. Um,
Hmm.
and what we'll learn about Louis is that he was, or David, is that he was kind of a tyrant. He was like an art tyrant. He ruled the art rule, uh, or the art world with kind of an iron fist during the revolution. It was really interesting. Hey, Fab Daddy. Um, but on August 22nd in 1806, he would die in Paris in relative poverty, really due to the rise of neoclassicism, um, which was the forte
Hmm.
of Jacques Louis David, um, and the collapse of the aristocracy, which had sustained him and many other Rococo artists.
Hmm.
So that was he did a lot during his life, and he's one of the more longer looked ones, or longer lived ones, than than the last two, because the previous two artists, Dutch artists we talked about, both died in their early 40s. But he
Yeah.
lived for quite a while.
Hmm.
So
And survived the revolution, which
yeah,
is often a remarkable feat in and of
yeah,
itself.
right, yeah, surviving the French Revolution without, and that may have been why he fled, initially, fearing that he may fall into the fall into the ire of the mob. But
Yes.
he himself was not, I mean, he wasn't controversial and he wasn't political. He just painted for those people. While David here was actually a friend of Robespierre. So, which is probably another way he was able to secure Fragonard the position at the um, Musée des Centrales des Arts. So, with that said, got that out of the way. We'll jump over to the first piece, which is the one we said earlier, the Jeroboam offering sacrifice for the idol. So this, like I said, was painted in 1752, and it's oil on canvas. It measures 45 by 57 inches, or 115 by 144.5 centimeters. And this is currently in the Académie des Beaux-Arts in Paris. The story depicts, or the painting depicts a story of First Kings, chapter 12, verses 26 through 30, and chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. I'm actually going to read through those here just so we have some context. So this is First Kings, chapter 12, verse 26 through 30. And Jeroboam said in his heart, "Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people Go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem. Then shall the heart of this people turn again unto the Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. So here is the second part of that. First Kings chapter 13, verse 1 through 5. And behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel. And Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, Behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name. And upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high place that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. And he gave a sign that the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord hath spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are beyond are upon it shall be poured out. And it came to pass, when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, that he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, Lay hold on him. And his hand, which he put forth against him, dried up, so that he could not pull it in again to him. Their altar was also rent, and the ashes poured from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. So, like we talked about during a lot of the Baroque works, which this is kind of reminiscent of a Baroque painting. It definitely doesn't have the Rococo
Indeed.
style. It does look far more like a religious Baroque painting. And there's a lot of interesting.
Got the element of Irusco in there as well.
It does indeed, with the heavy shading in the front and the directionality of the light. And a couple of things I think are interesting to point out is that he captured the hand, King Jeroboam's hand, or Jeroboam's hand, shriveled up, where he looks very distressed, trying to call the guards to seize him. So, and like I said before, this painting was painted for the Prix de Rome competition, and it's the one that won him admission and support from the crown to go to Italy to study the Baroque masters. So he hadn't actually gone to Rome to study Italian works by then. This was just, his observance of the styles at the time. And in the scene on the right, you can see Jeroboam on the right is offering a sacrifice. On the left, the prophet from Judah is denouncing the altar. And Jeroboam, again, with his hand out, ordering a prophet be seized, but his hand is struck useless by God. And this gives the scene the drama of judgment and divine intervention. And this is a grand history painting, and it's one of the few that he made prior to his rise as a Rococo master. It's not, a scene of mythology. It's supposedly, it's a scene from the Bible. So they treated that as history, as many people do. The detail in this is really phenomenal, and it's understandable why this would have won him accolades at the time. The realism is stunning. The figures have the look on the king's face is quite. He does a good job of capturing the fear on the king's face, and as we'll see later, he does a really good job with faces. Much like a lot of our artists we've talked about have done great job with faces, but this I think is this I think is um, very stark in that the
Hmm.
expression is he's very surprised, and the paleness of the face in contrast with the people around him does show a more the uh the pallid nature of his face does show a more it does a good job to show the surprise and the fear that struck him, when his hand was struck down.
Hmm.
So
It's one of those. Just the paleness in his face shows dramatically compared to all of the other characters in this scene.
yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's a great observation of kind of human nature and pallor in confrontational moments like this.
Right, right. um this king who is all a powerful person is suddenly being struck by God after being rebuked by a prophet, which would have to be very um I don't know, stunning, shocking, surprising.
Hmm.
And he does a fantastic job of capturing that, and it puts a lot of action and emotion into the scene. So, with that said, we'll move on to the next piece, which is the Blind Man's Bluff, and this one is definitely a Rococo style. So
Oh,
this is
very much
painted,
so.
yeah, and it's painted between 1750 and 1752. So it also this is also before he goes to uh, Italy, and it puts a really fine point on how talented he was in that he could use these broad arrays of style. Um, because this definitely has the Rococo style that he would have learned from Boucher, and has the sweeping like the sweeping curves, the highly detailed flowers. So let me read my blurb here. So again, painted between 1750 and 1752. It's oil on canvas, and it measures 46 by 36 inches, or 116.8 by 91.4 centimeters. And this is currently in the Toledo Museum of Art in Ohio. Now, when I first saw Toledo Museum of Art, I thought Spain. But no, yeah, it's straight up Toledo,
Yeah, I
Ohio.
would too. Wow. I'm gonna have to go visit Jungle Gyms and the Museum of Art now.
Right. So yeah, apparently there's a really great name in or a really great museum in Toledo, Ohio. So this depicts a party game of Blind Man's Bluff, which is a game of tag where the person who is it is blindfolded and must attempt to catch the other players. Of course, we call it blindfold tag when I was a kid. And although this is not strictly a depiction of an innocent game, it's a lot it's a flirtatious and subtly a lot erotic depiction, where a man playfully teases the woman with the blindfold. And the painting really presages Fragonard's love of gardens and outdoor spaces, as the flowers on the left here are really rendered in pretty exquisite detail.
Yeah.
The
And the background is amazing. Just it's very vibrant.
It is. The whole thing does have a very vibrant um oops, that's the wrong button. It has that there we go. That's the right button. It has the soft pastel colors that are emblematic of the Rococo. The flushed cheeks and the pale skin with the rosy hands and stuff like that. The
Hmm.
and the spacious blue sky behind them frames them as well. And in the left, in the shade of the flowers and the trees, there's two children who are portrayed. They almost look like cherubs. They're portrayed so softly and cherub-like, you know, young kids, which is very common in a lot of the Rococo pieces. Of course, it was common for a lot of art, a lot of children to be depicted in cherubic ways. But that's mostly because cherubs were depicted like babies and children. So it kind
Mm.
of blends into one way. And the man, you can see he's got a little twig that he's playfully brushing her face with, while the little kid on the side is using a stick to lead her hand away. And uh, this is really this is the Rococo style. Um, and this is the kind of work that Fragonard would mostly be known for later. Um, the playful, kind of intimate and uh, erotic depictions of the indulgent kind of aristocratic life. Like this is a scene
Mhm.
of real frivolity, of real carefree, of a real carefree society, which
Mhm.
which would be something you see in aristocratic circles, where most people, in the 1700s, um, didn't have a lot of chance to. They didn't have a lot of leisure time. Like serfs didn't have leisure time because they were fucking serfs. They were working their ass off so that people like this could have, that soft, easy life. And we'll zoom in, and yeah, the blindfold is up a little bit and she is peeking out from underneath it, which is really a phenomenal detail to capture in the work. Of course, I mean, you can't see it too well when you're zoomed out, but he puts so much like intricate and intimate detail into his works, which is one of the reasons why he was so highly sought after as an artist to paint private commissions.
Hmm.
The trees are something I just love the way the trees are depicted too, with the moss on the trees, and then the softness of
Well,
the
it's got a broken
leaves. And
branch.
yeah, yeah, it's fantastic detail on it. And then in the background, of course, there's like the gazebo,
Mhm.
which would be indicative of being in the garden and whatnot, not even just all the flowers and stuff. Then of course there's all sorts of real random accoutrements sitting around it too. um there's a lot more symbolism in this painting than we're actually going to break down here. um I think mostly for the interest of time, but
Mhm. And
yeah,
just
this.
kind of a side note to touch on with the Toledo Museum of Art, they also have paintings by Artemisia Gentileschi and
Oh,
also Jacques Louis David.
oh,
So
fantastic.
if you're in Ohio or traveling,
Yeah.
consider stopping Toledo for whatever crazy reason. I don't know.
If for some unfortunate reason you find yourself in Ohio, uh in Toledo. I don't know, we got customers in Ohio. Maybe one day I'll make it out there. That would be fantastic.
There you go.
So from there we'll move on to the next one, which is it's the swing, as it's commonly known, but it's also known as Happy Accidents of the Swing. And this was painted between 1767 and 1768. It's oil on canvas, and it measures 32 by 25 inches or 81 by 64.2 centimeters. And this currently
Ooh.
resides in the Wallace Collection in London. And of course, the painting depicts a an elegantly dressed woman on a swing and a smiling young man hiding in the bushes below, and to the left, or with his hat in his hand. um, and to the right there's a smiling older man in the bushes, or I mean older man, mostly hidden in the shadows, and he's propelling the swing by ropes. And then there's a small dog in the background, which is a fantastic detail, little dog at the bottom there.
Hmm.
As the woman kicks off her shoe, she leaves a gap in her legs, which is drawing the eyes of the young man actually up her dress. Which I brought this up at work today. This was my thing of the day in our weekly scrum. And one of the gals in the chat was like, "Is he looking up her dress?" Yeah, he's looking up her dress.
So that's why he's painted that. He got a little fish action that day.
Yeah, yeah. And so she's kicking her foot up, kicking her shoe off. So that's part of that the happy accidents, although it may not have specifically been an accident for her to uh to show what she's showing him in. And the look on his face, I think, is fantastic. It fantastically catches the like this is what I said about faces earlier. He does such a great job of capturing expression in a subtle way um without being it too overt, but also it being clearly seen. Uh let's see the and as you can see, this is it's an erotic gesture, and the flushed face of the young man, along with the hand position, suggests surprise and potential embarrassment. But because he's got the one hand kind of tilted back, of course, up to this point, the woman could have, he could have been standing there, and she could have knocked him over into the bush um, while she was swinging too, which would seem, I
I'm
mean,
sorry, but
it's. Oh, go ahead.
there's that pun in there about swinging him into the bush.
But
Sorry, I have the mind of a 12-year-old. I apparently.
but again, and this is really emblematic of the action contained in a lot of the Rococo works too. They weren't just not. It wasn't always just portraiture, and much like in Blind Man's Bluff, we saw the action. Like that's a scene. It's a scene that's happening at the time. A genre scene. These are genre scenes because they're not historical, and they show people in the act of living. Um, the flowers and statues are again his forte, and the billowing dress and the copious ornamentation of the garden are again hallmarks of the Rococo style. And another thing, because you can see this painting is mostly stupid thing. Cut it out. This painting is actually it's really split. The subjects, the people, and the light are only take up about half of the space, and maybe even a little less than half of the space. He put so much detail into the trees and the branches, and even the clouds in the background. And the branches twist and gnarl, and it almost looks like lightning in the sky. But it's such a fantastic detail, and he took so much time and care to depict the trees and make everything seem organic, um, and it has organic and kind of in motion. Let's
I
see, and
really
go
appreciate
ahead.
the leaves in the trees again. It's just this level of detail that everything's just slightly different, so it looks much more natural than some
Yeah,
of the other art that we've seen, where it's like almost cookie cutter, identical looking, where all of this is intentionally different.
right,
Because you can
and
see different types of trees, different types of flowering bushes, and it's fabulous.
yeah, it's a very lush kind of almost Eden-esque type of garden. And this painting itself is actually one of the most famous Rococo paintings. Um, when people think Rococo works, this painting is generally the first one that comes up with. Um, if you Google Rococo, this will be the first painting that comes up. And I'm just going to zoom in on the little dog down here because he's a cute little detail. So the little white dog, I think that's adorable. And then there's, of course, the cherubs on the fish, the statues, all the stuff that would be in those ostentatious and extremely expensive, extremely expensive aristocratic French gardens. So again, and the ropes and everything else on it, it's just so well done, and the attention to detail is really, it really makes you understand why he was such a famous or a popular artist and sought after at the time. So, uh, with that, where are we at on time? Okay, we got 15 minutes. So with that, we will jump to the next one, and this one actually is a bit of contrast from the swing and the blind man's buff. And this is the love letter, and this was painted in 1770. This is oil on canvas, and it measures 33 by 26 inches or 83.2 by 67 centimeters. And it currently resides in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And this is yet another genre scene depicting a daily life. But in contrast to those Blind Man Bluff and The Swing, this is about a private display of feeling and emotional intimacy. It's not a a grand scene of public decadence, for want of a better word. The mischievous display of The Swing really gives away to a far more quiet and intimate display here. And it centers on a woman in her private room with a bouquet and the aforementioned love letter. And you can see she's holding the bouquet close to her in a of course, a gesture that shows how much she cherishes it and the letter. And and in contrast again to The Swing and the love and the blind man's bluff, this has really loose brushwork. If you zoom in on it, of course there's lots of heavy highlight on it, but if you zoom in on it, you can see that a lot of the brush strokes on her dress and on the dog are heavy and wide. They're not as disciplined and contained as the other ones, and um, that could be kind of to help accentuate the scene, uh, to give it a more, I don't know, a more rough feel to it.
Hmm.
It definitely doesn't. It lacks a lot of the ornamentation of the other ones in the background, but it has quite a bit on the woman herself, with the especially with the way the light glints off of her and the heavy brush strokes. And again, he pays very good attention to the flowers, and the lead arsenic brush, uh the the lead arsenic face powder they used back then, giving her that nice white face with the rosy cheeks and the kind of smile and the mischievous look over her shoulder. um and it really shows it's a look of happiness and contentment. And you're getting let in on this private moment with her, which I think is fantastic. And then again, the inclusion of the
It's
dog. Go ahead.
it is one of the best expressive faces I've seen in a while, and it's not highly detailed, but it's all there. It's I would almost put that as far as the kind of the enigmatic but pleased expression is probably better than the Mona Lisa, in my opinion. Yeah, it's because
Yeah,
you kind of understand what she's thinking.
yeah, yeah. The whole scene comes together, and to really to really give you a good understanding of the emotion on her face. And I've talked about this with a guy on Discord, um, about how masterful some artists are in that they don't need to put a lot of detail into their work to capture the expressiveness that they're looking for. And I feel like he does an excellent job here. Like, there's just a subtle grin on her face, and the way her eyes are cocked towards the or looking, towards the viewer, does a great job of capturing the kind of the joy of this woman. And he puts the dog in there, which, dogs were really common among the aristocracy of the time, especially, the gay little froofy dogs. They loved those things. But then dogs also symbolize fidelity and loyalty. And this could be a meaning, the symbolism of that could be that the woman is not just, she's not just enwrapped by the fact that she's getting a letter from a suitor, but that she very much reciprocates those feelings as well. So it's a private joy and a private moment that is being shared with the viewer. In contrast, and it's pretty reserved as well, which is again very much in contrast with the swing and blind man's bluff, which show a public, a public out in the open frivolity, I think is the word. That's the best word. Frivolity. This does not seem as frivolous as the other paintings do. And we're going to wrap this one up with, see, there we are. This one is known as The Secret Meeting, but it's also, because it's part of that 4-part series, The Progress of Love. So this is The Progress of Love, the meeting. Again, painted between 1771 and 1773 for the Madame du Barry. It's a huge painting because it's a giant oil on canvas panel. So this is actually 10.4 feet tall by 95.9 inches or 317.5 centimeters by 243.8 centimeters. And this currently resides in the Frick collection, which I believe is in New York. And again, this is the part of the 4-part series of Progressive Love. And the painting really has so many of Fragonard's favorite themes: garden, romance, movement, ornament, secrecy, and desire. So with this one, he returns to the tight, clean brush strokes and vivid detail of the previous works. One thing that I thought was really neat was the statue of Venus and Cupid in the middle here. Let me zoom out a little bit. So this is, would be a statue piece in a garden, but I think that it helps to really cement so it helps encapsulate the theme of love in the painting. And of course, the painting depicts a woman and her lover meeting in secret in the garden. Because obviously he's got a ladder, he's climbing up the ladder to meet her while she's on the lookout. So they're kind of both on the lookout to make sure nobody's coming. And again, I don't know if I don't know if French people look like this or if this is just how they were depicted. But they're very, of course, the pale skin and all that stuff, I know was very popular at the time. And the hair being very done up and stuff would be something common to the aristocracy. And then, of course, the billowing dresses as well. And this man has his cloak. He's holding his cloak and climbing up the ladder. so that they could meet and who knows what they're gonna do, but it's a secret meeting, and so likely there's an organic conclusion to this work. Um, but it has a lot of really fantastic details. The flowers, everywhere the flowers are, they're done. They're just really done with a really beautiful detail, and even the flower on her head and on her corsage um, are very realistic looking.
Mm-hmm.
The trees, of course, again, a variety of trees, so it's not just a single, it's not just one single time. You have cedars, you have all sorts of different twisting trees done in a way that are very organic and natural looking. He's got like happy little trees all over his stuff. Uh
I- I'm just looking at the cloud bank too. That's amazing, amazing detail.
yeah, he does a fantastic job with the skies. And again, this is another one of those paintings where the people are, I mean, while the people do seem they are the subjects, they almost seem secondary to the background because there's so much detail in the background, in the trees, in the branches, in the sky, um, in the flowers. He took great care to make this seem like a very to make everything in it look very beautiful and organic. And which again is really an encapsulation of the Rococo style. So let's see, it's not just an image of love and longing, but it also represents the height of Rococo and of Fragonard's matured style. And it's the pinnacle of the movement right before the tastes would begin to shift to neoclassicism. And that's one of the reasons why Du Barry rejected the works, was because, um, as kind of like a high society bitch, her whims, her favor changed with the society, and the neoclassicism that would later be dominated by artists like David would um, were very much in contrast, but they would take over the uh, take over the scene. So I guess the sound is the sound is louder on your channel, Bleach. Says Violence.
Huzzah!
uh it's really good to see it's really good to see Avil. It is. I'm glad you stopped by. Um but we're 2 minutes to our hour. We'll go over this. Um so I was going to pull up the other paintings for this, but I figured I would run into a little more time because I've got quite a bit of time, or I had quite
Mhm.
a bit into this presentation. But that has been Jean-Honoré Fragonard, the one of the most the best known Rococo artists from pre-revolution France. He helped depict the say frivolity, the decadence, the uh, ostentatious display of the French aristocracy, which, led to the revolt. It led to people resenting them. And specifically because there was such a gap, there was so much poverty, there was so much destitution, while these people lived in the lap of luxury for no
Mhm.
real apparent reason, just many of them just by right of birth and who they knew.
Right. Yeah.
So
Hmm. No, that's fascinating. Just the massive contrast, and then the maturity of his work after spending time in Italy. Just that dramatic change, especially when it comes to the palettes he was using, because he was much more, from the earlier works that we see. with the Jeroboam painting. It's almost a throwback to Caravaggisti style, and
Yeah,
then that almost morphs into the swing. I think is probably a great example where there's kind of the elements, but the palette has changed so dramatically to this very bright pop kind of color palette.
right. Yeah, yeah, very much so. The dark and harsh tenebrist colors of the Baroque gives away to a soft pastel of the Rococo. Um, the harsh lines and stern, realistic figures of the Baroque uh, later also give way to the soft, effeminate or effete looking figures of the Rococo of the aristocracy, and so
Hmm.
it's a dramatic shift in styles, much like the Renaissance to Mannerist, and then from Mannerist to Baroque. Um, art movements change, and and in order to be recognized largely as the vast shifts that they are, artists have to take chances and be bold and uh, make something new. And
Hmm.
Rococo very much represents that. So with that, I think we're going to be done. We'll wrap up. We will be back. I think we're going to be back Thursday. We're probably going to switch to Thursdays on this now. Just so we're not
Yeah.
conflicting, because there's other streams now that I think would that are happening that may be taking a little bit of our audience, but or who we could pull audience from if we move to Thursdays, really. So with that, say thank you to the people in the chat. LGM, always solid. Violence is life. Lovely to see you. I'm glad you're here, sister. And Fab Daddy showed up. So uh, this was a great stream. And again, thank you very much for coming along with me and listening to me blather like a jackass for an hour, Bleach.
Always happy.
All right.
And on that note, I guess we're out. Thank you all again, and catch you later.
Chatelet, folks.